home. With me she'd say everything you want to dream away. We are legends every day. That's what she told me. Turn your magic on. To me she'd say everything you want to dream away. Under this pressure, under this weight, we are diamonds. And I feel my heart beating. I feel my heart underneath my skin. I feel my heart beating. You make me feel like I'm alive again. Alive again. Oh, you make me feel like I'm alive again. Said I can't go on, not in this way. I'm a dreamer, die by light of day. Gonna hold up half the sky and say, only I own me. And I feel my heart beating. I feel my heart underneath my skin. Oh, I can feel my heart beating. 'Cause you make me feel like I'm alive again. Alive again. Oh, you make me feel like I'm alive again. Turn your magic on. And me she'd say everything you want to dream away. Under this pressure, under this weight, we are diamonds taking shape. We are diamonds taking shape. If we've only got this life, this adventure, oh, that and if we've only got this life, you get me through. And if we've only got this life and this adventure, oh, that I wanna share it with you, with you, with you. See you, see you.
I've seen life through the eyes of a different soul. I left my past so my future would be under control. Now I got nothing standing in my way. I gave it all away. I gave it all away. I gave it all. You got me living how I wanted all along. Now all my tears are dried away. You got me living how I wanted all along. I feel so alive, alive inside, inside. I'm breaking through the haze to a brand new day. 'Cause my heart has been revived. How was I supposed to survive in this fast sea? I was so scared my own heart would try to abandon me. Now I got nothing standing in my way. I gave it all away. I gave it all away. You got me living feel so alive, alive, inside, inside. I'm breaking through the haze to a brand new day, 'cause my heart has been revived. I feel so alive, alive, inside, inside. I'm breaking through the haze to a brand new day, 'cause my heart has been revived. I feel so alive. I feel so alive.
Pride won't throw me, won't break me, won't scare me no more. Fear must have thought I was faithless, but it came from my heart. 'Cause I got a song that will never die. I know your love is the reason why. I'll sing the night into the morning. I'll sing the fear into your praise. I'll sing my soul into your presence. Whenever I say that, the devil don't knock today.
Many searching for answers, far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, because you know what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly speak as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. God, I pray that you'll just fill this room tonight with your Spirit, and I pray that we'll just be able to learn something about you, what it means to be in you, and I pray that whatever we learn today, that we'll just take into our lives and into the world, and that we'd be examples of you and your light. In Jesus' name, amen.
What is today? Palm Sunday. Good. That makes next week Easter. Here's the deal with Easter at church. We do a big celebration in the morning, celebrating, rightfully so, but that means we're going to give you the evenings to hang with your family. So, next Sunday, I know, I'm sorry, I have to hang out with my family. Next Sunday, if you're not doing anything in the morning, come to morning church. It's at 10. I know that's early for some of you to get out of bed. Some of you already come. Then right after church, we're having a fellowship out here, out back. It's going to be food. There's going to be drinks. There's going to be fun activities for little kids to do, but maybe even for you guys too. I'll think of something fun for you guys to do. But then we're not going to have youth next Sunday night. Is that okay? I'm sorry. But the good news is the next week is like super packed. So next week following Easter, on the 9th and 10th, you guys know what this is, right? We have the worship workshop. You've been hearing about it for a couple weeks. We actually have sign-ups starting tonight. You can see Isabel after this. Here's the deal. if you're remotely interested at all, doesn't matter if you play an instrument, doesn't matter if you think you can sing or not, we want you to come because it's going to be educational, it's going to be fun, it's going to be a day and a half not being stuck at home. So if you're interested at all, please come join us 9th and 10th. It's free. There's going to be good food. We're going to have good fellowship. We're going to hang out here, do some fun stuff, learn about how to worship Jesus together. Here, take this. Lucas would have taken that if he was in the chair. Next thing you need to know, that Sunday, the 11th, we're going to have a guest speaker. You don't have to listen to me. It's going to be great. Don't get... Okay. Their last name is still Barber, so don't get too excited. But my wife is going to start us off on our next series, which is really cool. The reason I asked her to teach that week is there's a good possibility I'm going to have to preach in big church on Sunday morning because it's notorious. Like the week after Christmas, the week after Easter are known like nationwide as Youth Pastor Preach Sunday because the senior pastor usually finds a reason to ask the youth pastor to preach. So I'm having to work on that. There's a good chance I'll be speaking that morning. So I asked my wife to be ready to speak that night and start us off on our new series, even if I'm not speaking that morning. So that will be exciting. You'll get to hear from Mrs. Barber, who's way better at speaking than I am. Anyway, so on that note, guys, we're finishing it up. We are in week 4, the final week of our series. Anybody know what it's called? Not so with you. Good job. Hey, I thought that maybe by this time this week you guys would know it, and I'm so happy. When I originally thought about doing this, I thought about like the saying, I'm so not with you. Like, are you tracking with me? Like, no. But, good. But, looking at the flip of it, looking at what Jesus says about us not being the same way as the world. But to start us off tonight, I want to think about this. And you can just yell out, someone tell me, first person who wants to say, what's a succinct definition of leadership? Right? Just something, or a word that pops in your head when you hear the word leadership. A general, perfect. Responsible. Integrity. I'm repeating it so that if there's anyone like the Ottmers watching at home tonight, they'll be able to hear it. Parents are leaders, yes. Anyone else? When you hear leadership. Good, we're at church. That is the correct answer. Who are some famous leaders in history? Jesus. Who else? Eisenhower. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Anybody else? Freddie Mercury. Yes. He's a leader. Yes. Joseph Stalin was a leader, right? Not a Winston Churchill. There you go. There's the opposite, right? There are good leaders and there are bad leaders, right? What made those people a leader? What made Stalin a leader? Communism, yeah. What made Churchill a leader? A group of followers. What made Jesus a leader? That's good. It's true. Thank you for those answers. We're going to circle back to that in a minute. I want us to take a look at a video in a second. But I'm going to recap, right? We started off this series looking at an interaction between Jesus and his best friends, right? The disciples, the 12 guys he hung out with, about power and about being first. If you remember the passage we looked at the very beginning of this was, there was a time when one of the apostles or two of the apostles' mama came up to Jesus and was like, hey, Jesus, you know my boys? Yeah, the good-looking ones. When you enter into your kingdom, will you let them sit at your right and your left? And she was looking for special treatment, right? And Jesus sits them all down and shows them just this picture about how it's not about being first, right? It's not about having power. It's not about the things that our world is obsessed with, right? And has been obsessed with for thousands of years. If we look back through history, it's all about power, all about control, all about being first, taking care of yourself. But Jesus told his disciples in Matthew 20:26, not so with you, right? This is what the world wants. This is what all of our culture says is the foundation of what we're doing, but not you guys. It should not be that way with you. He was teaching them to use their power not to control, but to serve, right? So tonight we're wrapping up that series by talking about influence. So I want you to check out this little video about someone who is very influential. It's okay. I am distracting. You guys want to hear my favorite joke? There were 2 muffins in an oven. And one muffin turned to the other muffin, and he said, dude, it's getting really hot in here. And the other muffin said, oh my gosh, a talking muffin. You'll laugh later when you get it. Do you want to hear my second favorite joke? There were 2 fish in a tank. One turned to the other. He said, you man the guns, I'll drive. That's all I got. That's all I got. Huh? There's a cheese joke? Yeah. Is it very Gouda?
There's a cheese factory that burnt down. Guess what the only thing left was?
There was a cheese factory that burnt down. Guess what the only thing that was left was? I'm repeating it for the stream. Debris. That's good. Wait, what are we restarting the projection computer? Does that mean the stream is still live? Okay. Liz, I'm about to tell my favorite story in the Bible. You're going to type out what it is because she knows. So, here we go. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23 to 26 or 27. I don't know. It says this. Then Elisha, was one of God's prophets, right, was going up Mount Carmel or Bethel or somewhere, going up a mountain, right, to worship God. It says, just then, youths came out of the town and jeered him and mocked him, saying, go on up, Baldy, go up and worship your God, Baldy. Not very nice. He turned and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the youths. And it says from there, he went on to Mount Carmel and went on to wherever, blah, 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 blah. Here's the deal. I've learned something about this passage. I went back and studied it. The Bible uses the word youths not very many times. Because in Jewish culture, you were a kid, and then you were an adult, right? When did adulthood start? About 14 or 15. So if you're not a kid, you're not 14 or 15, what are you? 11 or 12, right? Junior hires. Junior high boys specifically. Sometimes, junior high boys, your mouths can get you into trouble. You just say the first thing that comes to mind, and someday you might get eaten by a bear. So, the moral of this story is, think before you speak, and even God doesn't like junior high boys. So, are we good to go? Watch this video about influence.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old, and I was in school, and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, hey, stop tapping. A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, Clint, you have to stop tapping. It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, okay, maybe when you go back to class, Just try sitting on your hands. And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he asked, he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." From that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me and he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
Was Mr. Jensen a leader? Yes. Because Mr. Jensen was a teacher, right? But what made him a leader? Personal interest, right? Anyone else? What? Discipleship. His actions. Here's the one word that pops into my head. Influence. Right? Mr. Jensen had a life-changing influence on Clint's future. Let's go back to our list of leaders, right? Did they all have influence? Some for good, some for bad. But do you know what name is missing from that list of leaders? Yours. You all have influence, right? There's a commonly held view, right, of leadership that leads us to believe that some people are leaders and some people aren't, right? Let's go through a few of the misconceptions about leadership. Number one, first misconception about leadership is this, that it's a title. General, admiral, president, pastor, boss, teacher, team captain, right? If leadership is confined to a list, then a majority of us aren't leaders. If leadership is only about a title, then you need a title to be a leader. The next misconception about leadership is this, that it's a position or role. Maybe it's a position held in a band, right? Or quarterbacks on the football team, definitely a leader. Pitchers on the softball team, lead singers, first chair musicians are all leaders just by their position alone. Everyone else has to follow that person. But if you don't have one of those positions, can you still be a leader? Another misconception when it comes to leadership in culture throughout the years has been gender, right? Our culture is slowly changing on this one, but not as fast as it should. You look at our list of presidents throughout our history, what's missing? A woman. What sports get the most TV time? Men's sports. What characters are in most of our action and adventure movies? Men. Male heroes rescuing damsels in distress. Not all, of course. You have Black Widow, Captain Marvel, Lara Croft, all these female heroes, but they are outnumbered by far. And this has a subtle effect on our views of leadership and our view of women in particular. If you're not a man, you can't be a leader. That's not true, but it's one of the misconceptions. You understand? I'm not telling you that. You can't. Specifically, ladies, look me in the eyes. You are and can be a leader. Understand that, please. About one more. Leadership is about power. This is another misconception. Whoever has the power is the leader. If you take a look through history, you can see plenty of examples of individuals and empires that were considered leaders because they had power. Pharaoh, the Roman Empire, Alexander the Great, Hitler, the Nazis, right? All had power. All were considered leaders, not all good. It's easy to believe that title, position, gender, and power are what make a person a leader, but if we limit it to those categories, we miss the fact that leadership is about, what's the word I used? Influence, right? Listen to this. You don't have to have a title, position, power, or be a man to be a leader. All you need to have is influence. And the secret to leadership is this: we all have influence. It's just how you use it that will define what type of leader you're going to be. We all are leaders and followers at the same time. We're all being influenced, and we're all influencing. You're leading someone to do something, and you're being led by someone to do something. For instance, if you've ever bought a Big Mac from McDonald's, naked chicken chalupa from Taco Bell, or a video game, or a pair of Vans, or a new outfit after seeing a commercial or an ad on social media, guess what? You've been influenced. No, I haven't. Yes, you have. If you've been led to make a decision about what you're going to do with your time or your money, and how you will satisfy your appetite or your style or your choices, you've been influenced. Marketing and advertising are all about influence, right? They want you to choose their product, so what do? They lead you to believe that their product is the best product and you can't live without it. Mom, if I don't get this, I'm gonna die. I said that as a kid, for sure. I need this. Anybody? And your parents are like, do you need it or want it? Of course the answer is, I don't need it, but when you make a choice to purchase their product, then what's happened? You followed their lead. And this is not just about fast food or entertainment or style, right? It happens with relationships. If you've ever stopped wearing a particular piece of clothing because someone made a negative comment about it, that person was leading you to make a decision. That person influenced your clothing choices. If you've ever been dared to drink a bottle of Tabasco when at a Mexican restaurant, or to do a backflip on a trampoline, or do the 1-gallon milk chug challenge, all of those being very risky in their own way. And then you've done it, guess what? You've been influenced by the leadership or dare of someone else. If you've ever tried smoking, vaping, alcohol before you turn 21, you know the power of leadership and influence. It started with someone, maybe a friend or a celebrity or a commercial, but it influenced you and you followed. Flip all these examples on their head, right? If you've ever been the one to affect how someone dresses, you've influenced them. What risks they take, what they consume, how they treat others. You are a leader, whether you know it or not. There's always someone looking up to you and always someone you're looking up to. Someone you're following and someone who's following you. For those of you who are siblings in the room and have younger siblings, guess what? Even though they won't say it, they're following you. They're looking up to you. you influence them. You can influence others in so many ways. It's easy for us to use our influence for our own benefit, right? Or feeling good about something we're feeling bad about. It's easy to use our influence to take advantage of others, but here's what Jesus says: not so with you. There's a better way to use our influence and our leadership. People deserve better from us. Here's the deal. I need a person. I need a volunteer. Come here, Maggie. Here's the deal. You can influence people in, stand face the crowd, positive ways by helping push them forward. Maggie, come back. Or negative ways by, pushing them behind you. Don't fall down. Gosh, goodness gracious, you're not that weak. You can influence people up, go stand on that chair, and you can praise them and say, Maggie, you did a great job worshiping today. Or you can influence them negatively. I'm not going to, because I love you. Let's go sit down. Right? You can it's easy to build people up. It's easy to tear them down. It's easy to push people towards doing the right thing. It's just as easy to distract them from what God may be asking them to do because you're getting them focused on yourself. You can influence people all the time, but you can influence people to do good, or you can influence people to do bad. Bible word, evil. To pursue good or to pursue evil. You can see that influence is built in, baked in part of our life, right? Everybody agree? It's everywhere. What we look at on our phone, I open my phone, I start scrolling on Instagram, and there's tailor-made ads that pop up in between the photos that my friends posted of things that the algorithm knows based off of what this guy's looked at online before and what he's bought online before. If we put this ad in front of him, he's going to want to buy it. You know that's how our world is set up, right? Literally tailor-made ads. If we were both scrolling on Instagram, your phone and my phone, if we had the exact same friends, when that ad popped up, Ava's ad would look different than my ad, right? Because it knows that Ava's a 16-year-old girl, 17, 21, I don't know, right? And I'm a 36-year-old guy. I like Legos and Star Trek and Star Wars and nerdy things, and Ava likes nerdy things too. So maybe we might get the same ad, right? Who knows? None of us will use our influence perfectly. So don't stress about that. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have some regrets. And we will forget how powerful our influence is. But if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, right? This is all mostly geared towards us that have said we want to follow Jesus, because I'll be honest, if you're living in the world and you don't obey or follow Jesus, a lot of the stuff I say is just going to be like, why would I ever do that? That sounds like a bummer. Total buzzkill, Dan. What? But if we put ourselves in line with God and we say we want to follow the perfect example of who you were when you were on earth, right? If we call ourselves a follower of Jesus, we can become more mindful and intentional and proactive with the ways that we use our influence. One of the first Christian missionaries in the first century was a man named Paul. We've talked about him lots of times, right? But he knew from personal and cultural experience how influence could affect people's lives. We talked about him even in our last message. Paul grew up in the Middle East under the rule of the Roman Empire. He saw firsthand how leaders and emperors could use their influence to build an empire, right? To rule an empire, to be cruel as an empire. Paul was also the leader of Jewish religious system, right? He was a Pharisee, which means he knew all the rules, and he loved the rules, and he followed the rules. A role that came with a lot of influence, right? Influence that he used to persecute those who followed Jesus. Literally going from town to town with a note that he was allowed to go into what we would consider nowadays church services, break them up, take the people outside, and stone them. That was his job. They'd given him permission. He was the guy that was supposed to stomp out Christianity. But through an encounter with Jesus, right, Paul would demonstrate how influence can be transformed, right? How it could be used for good, not just for evil, for life instead of death. Once Paul understood who Jesus was, that Jesus is and was God, and how his death and resurrection brings freedom to our lives, freedom from sin, freedom from guilt and shame, Paul was able to use his influence in so many life-changing ways, right? Fortunately for us, we have written down in our Bibles collections of his letters, more of his writing than anyone else in the Bible by book number, not by length. John wins out a little bit, or Luke does. One of them. They're all pretty close. Doesn't matter. Side note, sometimes I get distracted and I have to come back to my notes. Paul's letters that he wrote to the churches on the ways that Jesus' death and resurrection, which we're about to celebrate next week, could transform and influence lives in a way that nothing else had in the history of mankind. Right? That's why we celebrate it. That's why we take whole seasons sometimes to participate and prepare for and celebrate first Jesus' birth at Christmas, right? But then his death, burial, and resurrection to pay the price of our sin and raise for our righteousness. Here's the deal. Paul writes this in Romans 12, 9-21. It says this, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to each other in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Bless those who persecute. Bless and do not curse. Do not repay evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Here's the deal. Paul begins and ends this section the same way, right? Good over evil. He says, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. And at the end he says, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. Then he goes on, here's what he does. He lists for us the ways to use our lives and our influence for good over evil. So I think we should look at them. We can use our influence for good by, if you just throw the verse back up if you want to, as I go through. Number one is being devoted to each other in brotherly love, right? Next one's honoring others above ourselves. Sharing with people in need. Blessing instead of cursing. Doing your best to do what's right. Living at peace and harmony the best you can. And not getting revenge, but leaving it up to God. Right? Now, look at me real quick because I'm going to talk about these one more time. These are hard. Right? They're not the way our world reacts when we're attacked. Right? Paul's very clear. As Jesus followers, we should use our influence for good instead of evil. Right? We should use our influence in a way, like in a world that responds to evil with evil. Jesus says, not so with you. Right? How do you do that? You love each other. It says among Christians, you should have that agape, right? We talked about that unconditional love for each other. Meaning, if Aiden got up after what I put him through last week and he came over here and slapped me in the face, I should not slap him back. If my friend got a little riled up last week and kicked me while I was on the ground, I should not punish him or still be mad at him. I need to forgive him, right? Whatever it is. We need to be devoted. It says devoted to one another in love. Right? It's easy for me to devote myself to my wife in love because she's my wife. It's easy for me to devote myself to my son. I talk about him every week, little Boaz, because he's my son. But the way we're supposed to look at each other that way, brothers and sisters, right? Honoring others above yourselves, meaning don't be looking for the spotlight all the time, right? Don't always be it's not the Dan show, right? It's the Jesus show. One of my favorite songs about this is Toby Mac's Let Me Take the Background. Is that it? I Can Play the Background. He says, he's getting ready for a show, like in the song. He says, I can play the background. Sometimes I know I get in the way. Jesus, take the spotlight. I can play the background. I can hang out in the back. It's not about me, right? Sharing with others in need. Guess what? Bible says if you have something and you know someone doesn't, you're called to share with them, especially other believers. And that doesn't mean that we don't take care of non-believers. We're supposed to take care of non-believers so then it gives us opportunity to tell people about Jesus, right? Because we don't know if they're going to be a believer or not. Blessing instead of cursing, right? Anybody talked smack at you recently? All the time, right? Do you talk back? Or do you bless them? It's hard. It is hard to not respond with harsh words when harsh words are spoken at you, right? So hard. Doing your best to do what's right. Living at peace and harmony. Sinner, right here, right? Doing your best. There's a verse that says, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Christian, you are supposed to be striving to live at peace and then not getting revenge, but leaving justice up to God, right? As Christians, we respond a different way, a way that's demonstrated to us through Jesus, through his life, through his death, through his resurrection, right? In the face of betrayal and abandonment and false accusations and ridicule and hatred and humiliation and crucifixion, evil in every definition of the word, Jesus chose to use his influence for good. Right? For the good of those who were executing him, for the good of his enemies, for us. Right? Because we've all sinned. We've all committed or thought or wished evil on someone else. Our sin and the sin of the whole world, Jesus on the cross put on himself and chose to forgive us. He chose to overcome evil with good. Yeah, with love. And as Jesus' followers, right, we're supposed to use our influence like Jesus for good and not for evil. And through this series, I've tried to paint a picture for us of what it looks like to follow Jesus in our culture today, right? Because there's many ways to describe what it means to follow Jesus. So we've tried to create a short list of ways, right, for us to live this out in our daily lives. I'd give you a couple points at the end of each sermon. And at the same time, right, I've added comments about maturity, right? Letting you know that it's not just about growing physically or in strength or mental, right? But personal maturity is areas of character and emotions and relationships. Physical maturity doesn't equal our social, relational, emotional, spiritual maturity. There's more to that. I want you to check out this video, video number 2, and then we'll circle back and we'll talk about it. This one's
Check this out, bro.
What's that, Brohim?
I switched to Geico and got more.
More savings on car insurance?
Yeah, Professor, and more, like renter's insurance.
More ways to save. Nice, Potato Chip.
That's not all Protein Shake. Geico has motorcycle and RV insurance too.
Ooh, that's a lot more.
Oh yeah, I'm all about more Teddy Roosevelt.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Right? Maturity is not automatic. It's not like going to the gym once and all of a sudden, every time they flash back to the dude, he just got more and more swell, right? Being older doesn't make you mature. Being in 12th grade doesn't make you mature. Being able to drink alcohol and being an adult doesn't make you mature. Being able to deadlift a cow doesn't make you mature. It takes time and attention to become a mature person. Focusing your attention on who you are and who you need to be and who you need to help mature leads to maturity, right? We're talking about influence. So whether or not you're a Jesus follower, here's the deal. You can choose maturity. And choosing it and taking one step forward, I always like to talk about failing forward. Meaning as long as you're getting up and you're moving towards your goal, even if you fall down on your face, you've made progress, right? And as Christians, though we're never going to be perfect, we're supposed to be striving to get closer to who and how Jesus acted, right? Not of our own strength. He's the one that gives us the strength to get up and keep doing it. But if we take one step forward and then fall on our faces, guess what? When we get up, we're closer. So you get up and you get ready and you take one more hard step forward, and guess what? As long as you fall forward, you can take a step in maturity. We've said this about mature people. It takes responsibility. A mature person takes responsibility for themselves, right? A mature person can have self-control over their words, actions, and urges. This is one of my favorite. A mature person is self-aware and open to feedback. That one's hard, right? Being willing to accept when someone's like, hey, I love you, but this part of you really sucks. You should work on this part. And not just being like, okay, now we're fighting, but saying, yes, I'm self-aware to know that that's my blind spot, right? That's the part of me that's rough around the edges, that still needs more Jesus. Thank you for being willing to come talk to me about it, right? And today, I want to add a fourth mark to maturity to this list and to our discussion about influence, and it's this. Mature people use what they have intentionally. So the word for this idea is stewardship. Everybody say stewardship. Stewardship. I used to have a student in my youth group whose name was Stuart, right? And I put his picture on a boat, and he was the stewardship. But, right, we've all been given certain skills and abilities. One of my favorite movies of all time is Taken. And so, like, the guy is, like, ex-spy, and his daughter gets kidnapped, and they call, like, asking for money. He's like, I don't have money, but what I do have is a particular set of skills, right? We've all been given skills, right? And abilities. These don't make us better than other people. Instead, they give us the ability to contribute and benefit others in a unique and specific way. You are gifted and skilled in a way that no one else is on earth. You are special. God has designed you in a way that you're going to have influence in the life of someone that I never will be able to. Because of who you are, because of the skills and the gifts that you have. This group has a variety of abilities. Athletic abilities, academic abilities, electronic abilities, social abilities, engineering abilities, communication abilities, musical abilities, caring abilities, etc., etc., etc. Stewardship is using those skills and abilities you have well. Using your influence intentionally instead of using it selfishly and wastefully. A mature person learns to understand this, that what they have, right? They're self-aware enough to know that what they have and what they've been given is not just for them. And they learn how to use it well. This turns our skills and abilities into positive expressions of influence, meaning we can use what God's given us to positively influence others. We're always influencing, right? Question is, how are we using it? Right? Have you ever wondered why rivers curve? Like all the rivers in the world, why don't they just go straight? If the water starts cutting straight, why don't they stay straight? Has anybody ever wondered that? Is anybody wondering that right now? Yes, because I just influenced you. Here's a short video about why rivers curve. It's the last video, I promise.
Compared to the whitewater streams that tumble down mountainsides, the meandering rivers of the plains may seem tame and lazy. But mountain streams are corralled by the steep walled valleys they carve. Their courses are literally set in stone. Out on the open plains, those stony walls give way to soft soil, allowing rivers to shift their banks and set their own ever-changing courses to the sea. Courses that almost never run straight. At least not for long, because all it takes to turn a straight stretch of river into a bendy one is a little disturbance and a lot of time. And in nature, there's plenty of both. Say, for example, that a muskrat burrows herself a den in one bank of a stream. Her tunnels make for a cozy home, but they also weaken the bank, which eventually begins to crumble and slump into the stream. Water rushes into the newly formed hollow, sweeping away loose dirt and making the hollow even hollower, which lets the water rush a little faster and sweep away a little more dirt, and so on and so on. As more of the stream's flow is diverted into the deepening hole on one bank and away from the other side of the channel, the flow there weakens and slows. And since slow-moving water can't carry the sand-sized particles that fast-moving water can, the dirt drops to the bottom and builds up to make the water there even shallower and slower, and then keeps accumulating until it becomes new land on the inside bank. Meanwhile, the fast-moving water near the outside bank sweeps out of the curve with enough momentum to carry it across the channel and slam it into the other side, where it starts to carve another curve, and then another, and then another, and then another. The wider the stream, the longer it takes the slingshotting current to reach the other side, and the greater the downstream distance to the next curve. In fact, measurements of meandering streams all over the world reveal a strikingly regular pattern. The length of one S-shaped meander tends to be about 6 times the width of the channel. So little tiny meandering streams tend to look just like miniature versions of their bigger relatives. As long as nothing gets in the way of a river's meandering, its curves will continue to grow curvier and curvier until they loop around and bumble into themselves. When that happens, the river's channel follows the straighter path downhill, leaving behind a crescent-shaped remnant called an oxbow lake.
Or a billabong.
O un lago en herradura.
Ou un bras mort.
We have lots of names for these lakes, since they can occur pretty much anywhere liquid flows, or used to. Which brings up an interesting question. What do the Martians call them?
That's good, thanks.
This Minute Earth video is brought to you.
Kill it, right? Didn't think you'd watch a science video tonight, but you just did, and now you know why rivers curve. In this whole series, we've been discussing the ways to use our power, words, energy, and tonight influence, right? This whole series is about influence others. There's a lot of evil in the world. And we can either contribute to it or, like Paul said, overcome it with good. The good that Paul described in his letter is the good that Jesus modeled for us. It's the good that Jesus died and rose again for us so that we could offer it to others. Thing. Just as nature can alter the flow of a river, the good that we do can alter the course of someone's life. Right? Think back to the video we watched at the beginning. One teacher changed the life of one kid. There are a number of ways that we can apply this message to our lives tonight. So I want to conclude with 3 application questions for you to ponder this week, right? And then we're going to go into worship, and we're going to play a game. It's going to be fun. So here's the 3 questions, right? I want you to ponder this week. If you're going to write them down so you take them home, think about them. How will you use your time? Right? We all have 24 hours today and each day. How will you use that time and the influence that you've been given by God? You can use that time on yourself, alone, selfishly, or you can spend it on the behalf of someone else to influence them, to use it for their benefit. But here's the one thing, as a Christian, you may never use your time for evil. Right? You have 2 choices. You can use it for yourself, you can use it to benefit others. You are no longer allowed to use it for evil. But how can you use it for good? How can you overcome laziness or selfishness or foolishness, the nisses, to use it for Jesus? Second one is this: how will you treat the opposite sex? I've made it a point in each one of these to address our relationship with the opposite sex, because I think it's so important. Multiple times in the Bible and throughout this series, right? If you're a follower of Christ, you need to understand that you should be known for how you treat each other, right? As Christians, we're supposed to be known for how we treat each other, and that includes how we treat the opposite sex. It should be different than the way the world does. It should be different than the way other people do. It should not be evil, but it should be good. One of the most damaging things I've ever seen happen is when a Christian starts to treat someone with evil. Even though they say they're a follower of Jesus, it's confusing, it's hypocritical, it's harmful. That's why Jesus says, "Not so with you." Right? Last one's this: how will you fight racism and discrimination? This is a hot topic thing in our world. This is a real issue. We're in a moment in time when racial tension is high. But here's the thing we need to understand: it's not new. People of color have been discriminated against for the last 400 years because of their race. It was wrong then, it's wrong now. It is and was injustice. Using the Apostle Paul's words, this is evil. And as followers of Jesus, we need to work to overcome evil with good. And it starts with us individually, right? All of us need to do the honest, hard work of looking at our own hearts and seeing if there's any glimmer of racism there. Just meanness towards people that don't look like us and don't act like us, right? The kingdom that we're now part of when we become Christians, Jesus' kingdom, right, is defined by diversity, right? Jesus wasn't some white guy living in California, right? He wasn't Hispanic. He wasn't black. He was Jewish, so he probably looks like a Middle Eastern person. And we get to heaven, it's just going to be filled, the Bible says, with every tongue, people that speak different languages, tribe, nation, people group, all worshiping God together, all made in God's image, right? Your influence is so vital. Your example, right, is so vital. And if you go and you begin to examine your own heart and ask God to remove racism from it, the next step is to use your influence to stand up to racism that's around you, right? It might be stopping a racist joke. It might be confronting discrimination that you see. You can have influence in this area also, right? How will you use your time? How will you treat the opposite sex? And how will you help overcome the evil of injustice and racism in our world? As we wrap up the series, I want you guys to know, like, what would it look like if we actually lived this way? Do you know that you, 14 students in this room, or however many, I can't count, whatever, can change the world? Right? What if we used our power to serve instead of control? What if we used our words to honor instead of devalue? What if we used our energy to love instead of consume? What if we used our influence for good instead of evil? Our world could look so different. Our friends' lives, our families, Benicia, Vallejo, Fairfield, wherever you live. I don't know. I'm the only one that lives up in Fairfield, but you still love me. Imagine what our relationships could look like, right? Imagine what our homes could look like. There's a lot of siblings in the room. Hey, brothers, you got to treat your sisters not like your sister, but like God's child. Sisters, don't just stare at your brothers because you're jerks too, right? What if we really loved each other? What could our schools look like? I know a lot of you are homeschooled, I get it, but we can have an impact wherever we are and whatever we're doing. Imagine what the world could look like, right? This type of life begins with the decision to follow Jesus. Like I say every week, if that's something you haven't done yet, come talk to me tonight. I am ready and willing and excited to introduce you to my best friend. But Liz isn't here. Liz isn't my best friend. Jesus is. And I want you to know him, and he wants to know you. Talk to me, or to one of the leaders, anyone you're comfortable with. Talk to another student. If you know they know Jesus, they will tell you about him. And if they don't, tell me, and I'll kick them and tell them to use their influence for good. I'm going to pray, and Blake's going to lead us in a song, and we're going to have some fun. Father God, I thank you so much.